Yes, please go ahead.
Welcome, sir. Welcome, sir. Am I audible?
Yes, you are. Please go ahead.
So, let me start. As we all know, this is our fourth webinar in the Education Emergency series. Uh, if you watch our previous session, you can check WhatsApp, you can check the Spare India YouTube channel. As we all know, in the times of crisis like natural disaster and war, education often get disturbed. But it's still very important to helping community to recover their and protect children. Today's session will be cover how to assess education needs and identify the challenges and create programs who works in helps in crisis situation. So we hope this session helps you improve education during the emergency to make sh- uh, make difference in a effective community. So thanks for the joining us and let's get started. I would like to invite our speaker today, Mr. Efren, Professional Development Programmer Manager for Asia from Save the Children. He has 11-year experience in EIE and also in the sector. So over to you, sir.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Am I audible?
Yes,
Yes.
sir. Yes.
Good. I'm Efren, and good to see you. And thank you, Save the Children. I saw Navin here, and of course our Spear, our partners. That this was planned a long time ago, and I know it's a series of webinar, and I'm so glad to be here and share with you some experiences on assessment, analysis, and design in education in emergencies. But perhaps before we start, while I will be uploading my presentation, if you could put in the chat box your name and possibly your organization you are representing, so at least I know who's in this webinar. So name and just organization, if you can type in. And then I'll share my screen now. Okay. Yeah, okay. So we have from Amrin is here from United Way Mumbai. Yeah. So I understand that this is a multi-sector representative of different organizations from INGOs, local NGOs, government, and also private sector who are all working for education and particularly education in emergencies. So this session is part of the Humanitarian Leadership Academy's module, and we call it Module 3, part of the EIE fundamentals course. And normally we give this training for about 9 hours, 6 to 9 hours, but we will condense it to 1.5 hour for this webinar. But I'm sure we will have an opportunity in the future to continue our discussion. Okay, so let me basically the structure of our webinar is that I will discuss by topic, so assessment first, and then I'll give you opportunity I'll entertain 2 or 3 questions for every topic, and then we'll move forward to analysis and to the design. Okay, so and much of if I'll ask question, you can also put it in the chat box, and so we can have more interaction. Okay, so um, so the objective of this session is basically, as I've said, this is a very orientational session on assessment, analysis, and design. So we will explain the different types of assessment and relevant to EIE response, and their appropriate phasing on which part or which phase of the emergency response to use the different type of assessment. The second objective of this session is to explain the role of analysis and to show you at least 2 analytical frameworks to help you in your analysis of data when you are designing an EIE response. And the third objective is to describe the different aspects, stages, and considerations of EIE program designing. So those are the 3 learning objectives that we have for this afternoon. Okay, I'm sure my colleague Rachel, also from the Asia Regional Office, she's our EIE advisor. She already talked about the different types of emergencies and the causes and the type of there are some emergencies who are slow or rapid, and if you could see in the screen right now, most of the emergencies that we are experiencing are in the rapid part and in the natural causes. No, so I'm based in Manila, Philippines, and we have very similar type of emergencies that we experience. Now it's a cyclone or monsoon season in our countries. So we experience a lot of flood, cyclone. We also have volcanic eruption in other parts of the region, and also in my country, we also experience earthquake. And we experience as well drought, from the last summer. So these are just to review the common types of emergencies that we experience in our context. This slide will basically tells us where to locate our work. Most of us are doing our work from the preparedness part, before the emergency happens, and then when the disaster happened, that is basically the broken line, and then most of us organization are doing response work, and then towards recovery, and then towards reconstruction. So it will be good to review this nexus of basically locating our work. So is your organization doing a lot of preparedness work, or is your organization doing a lot of response type of work, or your organization is more involved in recovery or reconstruction? And so we would like to know how you're doing your EIE response work in this nexus. Okay, So let us define why we are doing assessment, or why do we assess during emergency. Basically, we do an assessment because we wanted to know what has changed, no, before the emergency happens, and what was the situation after the emergency, no. So it's basically the same, no, when we are into most of us are into development work, and so this is what we call baseline, no. So basically we do an assessment during emergency because we wanted to know what has changed, in the situation before the emergency happened and after the emergency happened. And this is very crucial because this will affect how we identify the need, and how are we going to also identify our response and our aim, no? So the assessment is a very important and crucial process in emergency work. So we for education in emergency, we would like to assess or identify the education related problem caused by the emergency, no? And here it says differentiated from pre-existing issues, because most of us, because we are in education work in developing countries, we are already faced with a lot of problems. So, for example, problem on dropout rates. So we have higher dropout rates, or problem in poor performance of students in schools. So those are pre-existing issues. But the question here, when we do an assessment, is that how this pre-existing problem is actually exacerbated as an effect of the emergency. So that's why it's very important to do an assessment. We also assess because we wanted to understand the nature and extent of the problem, including its causes and effects, and identify the priorities of affected children and communities. So we always wanted to see who is the most educationally vulnerable in an emergency situation. So we all know that when an emergency happens, the different groups are affected, no, by an emergency. But from the lens of education in emergencies, we wanted to look at the affected children, no, being EIE supports, the rights of the child to continue their education. And so we wanted to know who is the most educationally vulnerable among the children and communities in emergencies. This is very important as we identify or design a feasible response or program. So the first tool that we can use is I'd like to ask if you can type in here in the chat box, what do you think are at least from your experience, what are the different data or information that you wanted to look at when you are doing an EIE response? Can you give me some data? So for example, you wanted to look at the population of students enrolled. Okay, so that's one example. Can anyone just type in the chat box? Anyone? Age, okay, yeah. It will be you want to look at gender as well. So how many girls are enrolled? How many 0 to 3 years old are actually there in the community? How many 4 to 6 years old? Those are very important data. What else? Anyone? Student information, SADD data, yeah, dropout status. Yes, very good. Anyone else? Access to the school. Okay. So access, yeah. Good. What else? Nutritional status and mental well-being. Very good. What else? Okay, so I'll share with you. Thank you for those who shared, some of the data sets that you think is very useful, no, of in doing an assessment in education in emergencies. So I'll share with you one tool in doing an analysis of an emergency situation, and this one is developed by ACAPS, one organization, and they call it an analysis pyramid, no? What I'm going to share with you is an adapted version. So I'll walk through this tool with you. And basically, this has three levels. The first level, at the bottom level, is your observation and description of the emergency. So these are the things that are easily observable, no? And then the second level of your analysis in the pyramid is explanation. So why these things happened, and then the third level is the interpretation and prediction. No, so what does it mean? Okay. Okay, so the first part is observation. What happened? Who is affected and how many and where? So, for example, you said that uh, so what happened? So, for example, there's a drought in one province that we are experiencing, and then in part of the observation is who is affected. So perhaps you can say the most affected are children who are 4 to 6 years old, and they are mostly girls. So those are easily observable observation. No, so if you could write in the chat box examples of observation that you have in an emergency. For example, flood. The situation is flood. And the question that we need to answer at the first level of our analysis is what happened, who is affected, how many, and where. Yeah. Anyone? Okay. Yeah, okay. So perhaps we're saying that the malnutrition, those who are experiencing malnutrition, so those who are experiencing sexually reproductive health issues, no? So basically, when we say is that these are mostly coming from secondary data available that we have. So how many families are there in that community experiencing flood? So those are easily observable description, no, of the situation. Okay. Um, The second part is how severe is it? So if the situation is flooding or drought, the second layer of your analysis should be able to describe the severity, no, of the flood. So, for example, flood has caused wide infrastructure damage, for example, or the drought has affected, for example, uh, um, uh, the the harvest of about 50 farmers in that community. No, so the second layer of observation is um, um, you are explain like or describing no how severe is the effect no of the emergency. The third layer is explanation. And this is basically why did it happen? So this is, for example, uh, what do you think would be an example of when you are reading a report on emergency, an example of this part of analysis and explanation? You're saying the dropout rate is increasing. Yes, you're right. Because your observation is that, for example, I'll give you one example. And using the dropout rate increasing. So the first layer of your observation is that let's say 100 schools are closed because of flooding. How severe is it? For example, you would say 20,000 children cannot go to school because of the flooding, and their families' food is also insecure because of its effect to agricultural farm. And then the explanation would be uh, there will be increase in dropout rate among students because of this situation. So if you notice the analysis is basically looking at the root cause of the problem and trying to make a strong link no of what's happening with our students because of emergency. Okay. Um, Sorry about that. I just got okay. So the next part of the analysis is looking at what may happen next, no? Interpretation and prediction. So if there will be dropout rate, increasing dropout rate, what may happen? No, so it means that more and more children will not receive education services. You also mentioned earlier that about mental health, no? So these also have some effects on mental health. It also have some potentially have some effect in terms of child protection issues if children will continue to drop out from school. So again, the top one of the top level of your analysis would be looking at interpretation and prediction. And the last one would be interpretation and another interpretation and prediction, but basically asking yourself, what do we need to know next? No? So one example of this is that, for example, if there's a dropout rate, increasing dropout rate, then what do you think would be the effect of the increasing dropout rate among children and among the communities? And as I mentioned, this might have potentially effect on child protection issues or some also effect on safeguarding issues as well, or mental health issues. So you were saying, okay, waterborne diseases may increase. Yeah. So yeah, that could be considered. Refugee context, language barrier, syllabus, the policies in the current country versus community-owned led initiatives. Yeah, this is also right, especially if you have refugees or displaced population that needs to settle in another place where the curriculum is different or the language being used is also different. You might have some question with this pyramid analysis. And do you think this is something helpful when you are building your assessment? Anyone? Yeah, chance of child marriage is also can be potentially affect if you have a high dropout rate. Yeah. So I hope this pyramid is somehow helpful to you. In our when we conduct EIE fundamentals, we spend a lot of time doing exercises on this. But since we don't have enough time, I'll just share with you this process. And normally it's useful if you run this process through a team and a multidisciplinary team at that and doing an assessment of emergency situation. Okay, so yeah, we can move. Okay, so I'll give you one example of this. The example is drought. So the observation is schools are closed. So when the drought happen, schools are closed. So you can describe the severity. So how many schools are closed, how many children are affected of the closure of schools during drought, right? So that's where you conduct your assessment. And that's why it's very important that your secondary data is always available in your organization, or you can also get it from government if there's an available data, so that you can easily somehow assess the severity of the emergency and its direct impact or effect to education system. And then the explanation is that schools are closed because they lack of water or food. No, so because of the drought, there's no that much supply of water, and so the school administrator decided to close the school because they cannot maintain the cleanliness and hygiene of the school because of the lack of water and food. And the interpretation and prediction is that children will fall behind or are dropped out unless education is reestablished. And children are missing out on education. So in this example, you would see how you can assess the emergency and actually strongly build the link of how it affects the education system. Please shortly briefing disabled and crippled. Yes, that's true. In our analysis, we should always include the children or people with disabilities in our analysis. They are very important. So when you do an analysis, always look at cross-cutting issues as well. How emergency situation and its effect is different from boys or girls, and how it's different from children with disabilities, or how the emergency is different from children who cannot speak the language that is where they are. So these are the different types of cross-cutting issues that you need to consider in your analysis. Okay, is this clear? Is this example clear to you? Any questions that you might have regarding assessment so far? Okay, I will continue. I will encourage you to put your questions in the chat box, and I will try to answer. So for this part, I will share with you 10 different assessment type of assessment. The good thing with EIE is that a lot of organizations have already developed different tools of assessment. And these are all available in the net, actually. So, organizations like Save the Children, INE, or Sphere, or Plan International, ADRA, or World Vision, they develop different types of assessment. And so I would like to briefly discuss this with you. The first part one is what we call it EMIRA, or the Multi-Sector Initial Rapid Assessment. And basically, this is an assessment to look at the overview of needs for the sectors, including EIE. So I'm sure you are all aware, for example, when an emergency happens, an organization or United Nations or UNICEF will publish an initial assessment. And basically, they will have an assessment about the situation of shelters. For example, 100 houses are damaged. They will tell us the situation of the different bridges, no, or infrastructure. They will also tell us the situation about hygiene and health. They will tell us about the education situation. So, meaning the different sectors. They will even tell us in the initial assessment of emergency, the market is the market available, the economy working, no? Is the goods available in a particular community where the emergency happened. And so again, this is multi-sectoral, and it's a rapid assessment, no, basically. And if you will look at the internet, there's a different example of this. The other one is the secondary data review, no? As I mentioned, this is very important, no? And a lot of our organization is actually storing, no? Or we have a storage of the different secondary data. So we can use that, no? This will give us an information on the pre-crisis situation. So that's very useful because, for example, you only have a data that 5 schools are affected, for example, of flood. And so if you have a secondary data telling you that how many is the children enrolled in that 5 schools and how many teachers are actually teaching in that 5 schools. So you already have a number available with you. And that's, on the first level of your analysis already, it's easily observable, no? The other one is Joint Rapid Assessment, or JRENA, and this is specific to education. So this is to provide more in-depth information on EIE needs, no? So usually this is initiated by organizations who are working in education. The other one is the other sector assessment. And as I mentioned, for example, child protection, WASH, health and nutrition, shelter, they are doing their own assessment. And the thing with during emergencies that it will be ideal, no, to for you to use other sector assessment as well. Because as we already know and discussed earlier, for example, the lack of shelter or limited shelter would have effect on education of children as well. And so it would be good to have this data. Sir, can you please focus on the average duration in days between initial assessment and actually relief material reaching to people affected? Yeah, we will go through that. I think in the next couple of slides, we will talk about that. We are working for education of children migrated due to flood in one area. How you support this organization? Okay, so yeah. So these are the different assessment. You may also have conflict-sensitive education assessment. This is basically mapping key education stakeholders and dynamics. So in cases that there are community conflicts, then you can use this as well. There are some tools that you can for gender-sensitive education to collect detailed information on the key barriers to inclusion in the community related to gender, ability, and marginalization. No, our concern earlier about children with disabilities can also be part of this. No, of this detailed information, looking at the different barriers that our children with disabilities experience during emergencies. Another assessment is the psychosocial support needs. And I think you mentioned that earlier about the mental health. This is also very important. Determine the extent and nature of the distress and trauma children are suffering. No, so we all know that when an emergency happen, this may affect no or be a cause of distress to our children or even to teachers and their families. So we need some psychosocial support assessment as well. This is social-emotional learning to identify aspects of social and emotional learning. Because as you know, when an emergency happen and uh, when children experience toxic stress, if the emergency is so huge, uh, then they will have some of the children may experience some difficulty in learning. And so we need to assess no social and emotional learning of students so that we can support them properly during emergency. Another assessment, this is used for children who are younger, like 6-year-old below, and basically early years of education intervention. It's called IDELA, or Early Learning and Development Assessment. And same as the other one, the early grade reading and math assessment. Um, yeah, to design, this is used to design and implement interventions to boost literacy and numeracy. So again, what I am sharing you is just 10 examples of tools or assessment available. And you can find a lot of tools in the web and in different organizations. And so the thing is, you will not start from scratch, no, when an emergency happen, or probably perhaps part of your preparedness actually is training your team or your staff in using some of these tools. So when an emergency happens, they already are equipped in using these tools of assessment. So earlier, they have a question. So, sir, can how between number of days, no, between the initial assessment and the actual relief, no, there's no there's no specific rules or guidelines into this. But basically, what had happened is that this is basically the pre-crisis, and you already have some data available, secondary data available, and then a crisis happened. And so your multi-stakeholders initial response is usually happening on the initial days and initial weeks of emergency. But again, it will not stop you from not responding, because you have already somehow an estimate number of affected population based on secondary data that you have, or based on the estimates that the government informed you. So this is where how we use our different assessment tools. So some assessment tools are more appropriate to use during the at the latter part of the response, like after first month or onwards. So for example, if you have like 6 months response, some data would be more useful at the latter stage of your response rather than having it in the initial days. So again, there's no specific guidance on this, but what we are trying to show you is that this is basically like based on the experience from different countries. This is how they use the different types of assessment tools. Yeah. Okay. Could you please share the assessment tools? Meaning the tools available. Yeah, I have a compilation of the tools that I got and I collected. I'll share it with Michelle, and so that the Spear can store this, and you can actually use it. Uh, uh, yeah. PDNA is more, yeah. It's also a form of assessment. Yeah. I'll get back to you on the exact definition of that. Yeah. But yeah, I will share a sample tools to the Sphere network. Any other question? Okay. So, in doing an assessment, most of the time, when an emergency happen, we are doing uncoordinated assessment, meaning different organizations are doing their own assessments. Different organizations are using different methodologies of collecting data. You are creating different reports. So, for example, WASH, the child protection, the education have different assessments that you are doing and different reports, and these are not systematically shared. No, and this is the usual what's happening. Our goal in the education sector is to have at least a harmonized assessment approach. And that would mean that you can probably have multiple assessment uh, uh, done by different organization, but you are sharing common indicators in that assessment. Or probably you're doing assessments using different methodologies, but at somehow you can interact or interoperable, meaning you can use the data that is being collected by organization A and organization C, no? So things like that. Or in a harmonized situation, you can also have a single report, meaning different organizations will contribute to a one report about the assessment, or you can have multiple reports, but again, as I've said, you are sharing a common indicator. You are looking at, for example, the situation of school-age children. But you are doing different methodologies, and you are using different tools in assessment. So it also considered harmonized. Why harmonized assessment is very important? One is that doing an assessment is very costly. So it needs a lot of time, a lot of people to do it. Yeah, you're right. Thanks, Navin. PDNA, post-disaster needs assessment. Yeah, good. For reminding me that. Um, so so doing a harmonized assessment would actually save you a lot of time and save you a lot of resources. And that would mean if you save a lot of time and a lot of resources, you have more resources for your actual response. No, the ideal is it's a joint assessment, like a common assessment form, a common methodology, and a common report. So for example, this is the ideal. We encourage the education sector to work on this. While the emergency is not yet here, you can probably in your meetings to kind of like think about, can we have a common assessment form when an emergency happens? And can we train our people to use that same form? Uh, and can we use the same methodology and create one report, no, of the education sector? So, and again, you can also decide work, in with organizations that you think you can work with. Like in my experience, for example, I was with BRAC then. So we normally do a harmonized, no, a joint assessment. So for example, I work with Humanitarian Inclusion, BRAC, and ADRA. So we did a joint assessment of an emergency. And so we're using a common form, a common methodology, and we create a common report. No? So when we present it to the humanitarian country team, it becomes a report of the three organization, and it saves us a lot of time and resources. Please share the another question. In how many countries is this project being implemented? What do you mean? Um, what do you mean project? Um, Let me clarify that. If you can tell me what is the project you are referring to, but this is the the assessment approach that we are suggesting, so you can save more time and more resources, no, to have more a harmonized and a joint approach. May I ask you, the participants, if you can type it here, if you have any experience of doing either a harmonized or a joint assessment during emergency. Anyone? And if you could tell me, you know, you either work with government or you work with other INGOs or local NGOs in doing a harmonized and joint assessment. Anyone? Okay. So as I've said, having a shared, a joint or harmonized assessment will increase your coordination as a sector, no? So even if just a small packets of, a huge education sector, it will still increase or improve your coordination systems. And so that's why we encourage the different actors of education to at least look at a harmonized or a joint approach. As a local NGO, we have partnered with INGO and done joint assessment. Great. Yeah. Department of Education. Yeah. Local administration. Yes, you're right. So yeah, and try as well looking at, if it's not your specialization or your not niche. So for example, your organization is not trained or specialized in children with disabilities. So find a partner who have a specialization on children with disabilities that can help you in doing an assessment. That is good. One, or you don't have any specialization on doing an assessment on mental health or an assessment on early child education. So you can consider this. Yes, partnership with NGOs, research organization. No, so think of where to whom you can partner in doing an assessment and consider all these different cross-cutting issues. And if you think you don't have that capacity for that very specific issues, and you wanted to assess them, you wanted to assess the situation, then, look for partner and have a harmonized or joint assessment. journalists as well is a good, yeah, it's a good thing. Yeah. So any other question before we proceed? How are we going to use this data in our analysis? No? Any question? Any question on assessment? Okay. So if none, I'll go through the analysis. So when we conduct the assessment, we already have data with us. So for examples that you have gave me is that dropout rate, number of children enrolled, number of girls, boys. You classify them based on their age or school age. You also look at the mental health status. You also look at the nutrition status of children. So, all this data. So always keep that in mind as we continue our discussion. So the whole point of doing an analysis during emergencies is you wanted to compare the severity of the conditions between various affected groups and locations. No, so this is very important. Again, I mentioned earlier in the assessment that what we are trying to look at is that who is the most educationally vulnerable population. No, so for example, in one of my experience interaction is that, for example, you have identified that in a country where you have different islands, that the most vulnerable, for example, is the children in basic education who are in isolated islands, no, part of the country. Or you, for example, you identified that there is an increasing dropout rate of children who are girls in the secondary school. And so you think that when a flash flood happened in the city, perhaps the most vulnerable are those children who are girls and at risk of dropping out in secondary schools. No, so you wanted to track, no, the condition of these groups and their location. You wanted to identify and explain the underlying factors. So why do you think the emergency would exacerbate the situation of this the problem and the situation of this group of children? No, so you do that analysis part of your assessment, because that's very important when you identify the different response that you would like to do. No, you wanted to predict and forecast the evolution of the impact of this disaster. So again, you would say that, okay, if this flash flood and there's so much infrastructure damage that had happened, and it will probably affect 6 months down the road, then what will be the impact to children, no, who are at risk of dropping out? So that would mean it's increasing learning loss among students. And so we have to consider that, no? We also need to prioritize most important issues and target groups. And I think you mentioned that earlier. So for example, issues on child protection, issues on child early marriage, issues on mental health and psychosocial. These are protection issues mostly that we need to consider, and we need to immediately look at when we analyze the effect of emergency, because that requires an immediate action and an immediate response to mitigate the risk, no, of protection issues to our children. Support the definition and selection of appropriate and proportionate response modalities, no? So again, I think I mentioned this earlier. When an emergency happens, we know that the whole population is affected. But in reality, our organization have very limited resources. Hence, we need to select, target, or prioritize the most vulnerable population that we need to respond on. And so doing an assessment and analysis of the emergency based on data or based, is very important because you need to make that decision. So for example, a decision to focus on 6 to 12-year-old children with disabilities because the roads are damaged, and so children with physical disabilities will have difficult access to schools. And so those are type of decisions, hard decisions that we need to make, and the assessment and analysis will help us inform on those decisions. I'd like to check if there's a question. Sorry. I cannot see the chat. I'll check the chat. Anyone who would like to check any question about the why we do analysis? Or from your experience, why do you think analysis is important during emergency response? Or I'll share with you an example, no? What to use, what tools to use. Oh, okay. So can you see my screen? Okay, so these are an example of doing an analysis of specific to education in emergencies. And if you will notice, there are 3 circles on the left side of the screen. And the 3 circles are basically telling us physical and psychological protection and well-being. So one of the aim of EIE is to ensure protection among children. Okay. And then the second circle, which is colored yellow, is continuity of learning. So the second aim of EIE is to continue learning activities of children during emergencies, no? And the third one, the third circle is that looking at how can we build back better, or the window of opportunity to improve quality, build resilience, and include the excluded. Or this is basically the build back better is the opportunity, to improve our education system, because of after the emergency happened, and after we implement our response. So how can we use this? And we call this EIE overarching aims, So using these EIE aims, it will be helpful for our analysis to ask ourselves with this question. On the first circle about the the protection is ask ourselves, who needs protecting? So among the population who are affected by the emergency, ask ourselves, who needs protection? Who needs protections on child early forced marriage? Who needs protection on potential child protection issues? Who needs protection in terms of their physical environment? No? And ask ourselves, where are they? Where are they located in that whole geography where emergency is happening. So if it's drought, if it's flash floods, zero in our analysis to one particular geographical location, no? And ask ourselves, what can EIE contribute to this, no? So, and we will be closely working with child protection in emergency. So there are a lot of children's organization have their own separate child protection unit or child protection program, and so we need to work with them. But the basic question is, what kind of education services that we can provide so we can ensure that this population is protected, no? So that's the question that we need to consider. The second level of question is that, as I've said, the second aim of EIE is continuity of learning, no? So the question is, who is most likely to drop out, no? So if we are saying that most likely, based on our data and based on our assessment, girl child from the age of 6 to 12-year-old will be most likely to drop out for reasons like, they need to help their families in household chores, or they are ill, or they cannot walk to school because the bridge are damaged. So we need to identify that they are the most vulnerable group because they are most likely to drop out of school. And we need to identify where are they, no, in our the community that we are looking at. And again, ask ourselves, uh, what can EIE do, or the services of education can do to continue, no, their education and prevent them for dropping out. And also that includes, how can we retain teachers, because who will also actually teach them. Yeah. Analysis is important to know the complexity of the ground realities and condition of the emergency need. Yes, you're right, no? And again, what I am just sharing with you is actually just one or two tools of analysis, but we can still look at how complex our EIE is. And please explain our meaning of EIE. EIE means education in emergencies. And education in emergencies is a different set of activities, no? And during emergencies, making sure that we are responding to the needs of the children in terms of to continue their learning, they are being protected, and it's basically founded from the rights of the child, that every child has the right to education, even during crisis, no? So that is education in emergencies. Okay, so the third part is basically, as you said, build back better. And I think I mentioned this earlier, that most of us are working within pre-existing problems. And so they are already existing excluded group. So for example, children with disabilities can be an example of already an excluded group. But when an emergency happened, their situation becomes worse, no? Because they need a different service, or probably, in fact, in my experience with other countries, they don't even have relevant data available about children with disabilities. So how can you start an EIE response with this excluded group when they are actually invisible to your development plan or response plan? And so, yeah, perhaps it's one way of looking at it. No? So ask ourselves, who needs protecting from the excluded group? Where are they? How EIE can contribute and get them into school? Or what can be done to improve their quality of education and their environment? And yeah, how can EIE contribute, no? So that they will be included, no, in the development and in the response. Before I proceed, do you have any question about this EIE overarching aims, and how do we use this in our analysis? Sir, I am working with the children who are affected by the present Manipur ethnic crisis since last year. Thus far, I have no such support from NGO or government. I am curious to know if any organization or NGO whom I can approach, or can EIE help in any ways? Yeah. Yeah, you're actually starting in the right place. You are now attending the webinar, and I think most of the attendees of our webinar are education actors, no, in your country. So I would suggest, to network with this organization and the people within in this webinar, and I'm sure they can help you in some way. They may probably have their own experience of doing assessment or doing analysis in that situation among ethnic groups. And yeah, you can start from there. And also, um Sphere and INEE have their own, standards or manual of how to design, how to implement and monitor EIE strategies. That could also be a good starting point for you and your organization to begin with. Yeah. Any other question? I'd like to ask my colleagues from Save the Children and Sphere if you have any addition to what I am saying. Good.
Hi, friend, Naveen this side.
Yes, please, Navin, go ahead.
So I think but in Indian context, the EIA concept is very much similar and aligned, which you are mentioning about. So as some of the query which came out, I am parallelly answering those questions. So,
Mhm,
however, in Indian context, we all need to understand it's a new concept because right
mhm.
now in India, because we are facing a lot of disaster in every year. So
Yeah.
right now in Kerala, we are facing a huge disaster where the more than 300 or 400 people were died. And
Mhm.
similarly,
Yeah.
Andhra, Telangana, everywhere the disaster has been occurring because it's a monsoon season. And the education is a sector which is a very less prepared.
Yeah.
We can say so because the first initiate that government is doing in any kind of emergency, just closing the schools and
Mhm.
transform into the shelter camps or any other camps. So the continuity of the education in this period of time is interrupted. And
Yeah.
this is the only way to manage the children for their protection, for their health,
Mhm.
for their nutrition and well-being. So how we can ensure that the children can access the education during this period of time, where the
Mhm.
assessment, proper planning, and execution could be played a crucial role.
Yeah.
So I think in Indian context, it is a new concept which we can bring. We have a
Mhm.
school safety policies. We have executed this education, a safe school common approaches and all those things. But education is emergency is a new concept where we in Indian context, we are understanding and some states are doing very well. Like for example, Assam, they have initiated the concept of child-friendly spaces during an during a disaster and emergency.
Mhm.
In Kerala, some part they have accepted this. So this is also a crucial part. So
Yeah.
so gradually it is the awareness is been coming and people they are start understanding this concept. However, as a larger audience where we need to build the capacity so that they can be also the change maker for their state, for their community, and for their local needs. So that what I would like to add here. Thank
Thank
you, friend.
you. Thank you, Navin. I think that that's a very important insight. And I would say a lot of countries that I've been to is that we're still in the baby steps of our EIE in a lot of ways. And one of the interesting way to make sure that our communities are ready and we are able to respond to the needs of children, education needs of children, is really to localize EIE. Meaning, and as you said, no, meaning we need to build the capacities of our local actors, meaning teachers, parents, school heads, no, and local government, no, and create that education sector that is, will think about their preparedness and will also be ready for their response when an emergency happens. And of course, this will be also be supported by civil society organizations at the local, national, or even international organizations. So yeah, you're right. And I think you mentioned that there are some local communities in your context that EIEs or kind of like or they already have a buy-in. So we must continue to build this, no? And that's why I'm so grateful that this webinar we have a lot of participants coming from local organization as well, because really the situation should the solution must start from must be built from the local network. Yeah. Okay, I'll proceed. So this is an example, no, of how you select population and looking at the vulnerability analysis. So you will be rating, for example, protection issues, potential dropout issues, no? And if the system is working well or not, or strong enough, no? And a team or an organization usually does this when they do an assessment. So I'd like to relate this to what Navin was saying, is that our goal should be like at the local level, they will be able to do this analysis when an emergency happens, no? This can be part of their preparedness work, no, or preparedness part. So going back, I'm sure some of you are already familiar with the problem tree, and this is we don't have time to really discuss details of this, but basically we use the problem tree to design an EIE response. So what we were talking about earlier is identifying the problem, and basically the problem tree is working from the root or underlying cause and looking at what are the different contributing causes that why the core problem is happening, no? It's called problem tree because the shape is like a tree, no? So the core problem is the trunk of the tree, and the causes are the roots of the tree, and the effects is the branches of the tree, no? So this the problem tree is a useful and an effective tool that your team can use to analyze the effect of emergency to education system, no? So okay, so the other thing is when you do an analysis of your education in emergency, I'd like you to consider as well three things. No, so I know when an emergency happens, there are so many problems happening. No, but also I want you to look at the education system, looking at with this emergency, how will it affect the participation of children going to school? And we've been saying that, no? There might be some increased dropout rates and all these things, no? So participation. So most likely they will not go to school because of emergency situation. Also look at the achievement, you know, the performance of your students. So how will the emergency affect, for example, their reading skills, no? The learning loss. So, for example, based on the study of Asian Development Bank, during the pandemic, globally, the learning loss of students globally is that they lost at about 1.5 years of learning. No, so we also have to consider that if the schools will be closed in the next 6 months because of emergency, how will it affect of the it affect the achievements of our students. The second is with the emergency situation. So you probably have damaged schools. You don't have books. You don't have materials. How will it affect the quality of education? No? So, uh, I'm suggesting that we need to look at these three areas of barriers to education so that our analysis is sharper and we will be able to identify a response that would really help our students, no, to improve their participation, to improve their achievement, and to be able to somehow deliver still a quality education during emergencies. Okay, so consider that. I would say this is very simple. When an emergency happens, this is our theory of change. There is a disruption to learning and development and increased risk, no? And the aim of EIE is to limit the disruption, allow continuity of learning, and improve its quality and mitigate the protection risk among children. That's why normally what we do is that we set up temporary learning space for children. If the schools are damaged, we set up as a temporary learning space because we wanted to limit the disruption and to continue the education services. No, so this is the aim of EIE. So this is the theory of change of EIE. No, so when we look at designing our EIE response, we have to consider one is the protection and well-being, physical and psychological protection and well-being. So what are the different activities that we can provide as a form of response to ensure protection and well-being of children? What are the different services and activities that we can provide to ensure the continuity of learning, prevent the dropout rate, promote the return to school, for example? No? So, for example, your distribution of school kits is one form of ensuring that they will continue their learning. Because, for example, all their school materials and supplies are damaged by the by the crisis. And so you are giving, children all these school kits so that they will continue learning. No? And then looking at how, again, it's a question of how can we better prepare our local institution or our education system for the next for the next emergency. Because for especially for us living in Asia, the our experience of emergency is cyclical. No, it's happening every year. So, for example, in my country, in the Philippines, we experienced 26 typhoons or cyclone in a year. And so, it's very important how we look at localized solutions on how to respond in emergencies or into cyclones, no? So as we speak right now, about 6 countries in Asia region are experiencing flood and cyclone. So that's how vulnerable our region is, no? So, and I'm sure it's as Navin has mentioned, no, how many provinces are experiencing flood right now in India. So, and how many people are affected by this flood. And so, yeah, we really need to think of these EIE strategies, because we will be facing all sorts of emergencies as a result of climate crisis, no? Yeah. Okay. Any thoughts or question? So I hope you are beginning to see the relationship that we started with assessment, with the analysis, and it's actually building you to program designing. And in this screen, I am showing you the different aspects and stages of program designing. And it's not different from how we design our program in the development context. One is you need to identify your priority needs, review the programmatic response, develop clear program aims and objectives, identify the target numbers and target group, no? So that's where your selection and prioritization will come in. And develop your theory of change. And basically, I shared that with you, that EIE has a very simple and direct theory of change. And what we aim for is to ensure continuity of learning and children are protected, no? And then you need to identify feasible activities, no, to achieve those aims and change. And then develop a monitoring framework and develop a lag frame, no? And as I've said, this module is actually discussed for one day in an EIE fundamentals course. And so it's unfortunate that I cannot discuss this with you in detail. So one way of designing a program is using the solution tree. So remember, earlier we have a problem tree, no? So in designing a EIE response, what you will need is a solution tree analysis. And basically a solution tree analysis is you are flipping the problem tree. So you have to identify the opposite of your problem tree. So remember, the roots in the problem tree is causes of the problem. Here, what you will identify here at the roots of the solution tree is causes of improvement, right? The trunk of the tree in problem tree is the core problem. Here, the trunk of the tree is your principal solution or improvement. Okay? And the branches of the tree in the problem tree is the effects of the problem. Here, it's the result of improvement. So it's an opposite. Solution tree is the opposite of the problem tree, no? So yeah, when we will have an opportunity for an in-person training, we will have a workshop, no, of doing this. But this is a very important or useful tool, especially if you will be writing a proposal for an EIE response. This exercise is very useful uh, to be, conducted among your team, so that, you will have a more holistic and participatory way of designing your EIE response. I'll check if there's a question. Okay, so this is the magic. Most of us, when we write proposals or a plan, no, a project plan, most of us, they will, part of our plan is to look at inputs, look at the left side of the screen, inputs, activities, outputs, outcomes, and impact. And this is basically parts of our log frame analysis. No? So when we are writing a project proposal, either in development or in humanitarian, we have this. We have to present our log frame. And the good thing is that if you have done your solution tree analysis, you can easily actually identify these parts using your solution tree analysis. So, for example, the part of the contribution to the solution, it's actually inputs and activities, right? So what you are just going to do is that what you have just identified in your solution tree, you can actually transfer it as inputs and activities. And the solution, the principal solution, and the first stage of the result, no, is considered as an output. The higher level of the effect, or the higher level of the trunk of the branches, is considered as outcomes. And the top part of your tree is the impact. So, at least from my experience doing this workshop among education and EIE organization, they find this tool very helpful because it's easier now to develop your project proposal. I'm checking the time, Michelle. I think we only have 5 minutes left. Am I right? Michelle?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
So I'd like to ask if there's any question from our participants. So we can, and then I'll share the PowerPoint presentation after this session. Any question? Oh, can they actually unmute Michelle or?
yeah. Participants should be able to unmute themselves. If you
Yeah.
have any
So
questions, please feel free to ask them.
anyone? So this is how it looks like. The log frame. This is how it looks like, or a results-based management program design. Your input is basically input and activities is how, and then what do we want to achieve as a result of our input and activities, and why we are doing this. And this is basically our outcomes and our impact. So I'd like to end it here. And if you have any question, please unmute yourself.
You can also email us if you have any questions and would like to clarify. And we'll reach out to Efrain and the resource person to ensure that your query gets answered.
Okay. Yeah. And I think we have a plan to do an in-person training so we can have more detailed discussion. But Michelle, I just wanted to share the programs of Humanitarian Leadership Academy, that they can also continue exploring EIE on their own time. Yeah, this one. So as I've said, we conduct EIE fundamentals in different countries. And I think we have a plan for India. I don't know the details yet, but we are talking to Spear and Navin about it. With the EIE online, it's available through Kaya Connect, and it's free. We have a lot of modules available there. So if you wanted to explore more about EIE, you can log in online and use this. No? And currently, we also have a EIE advanced course in partnership with the University of Geneva. This is a 9-month course, postgraduate course on education in emergencies. We're currently running our first cohort, and we will be opening a new cohort for next year. And we will definitely inform Navin and Spear so that we can get more applicants from India. And this is a competitive application. So yeah, I think Michelle and Navin, that's it for me, unless there's any other participant who would like to share a quick insight about the session.
Thank you so much, sir, for the informative presentation.
Thank you.
We have learned important tools like strategy and assessing the planning, education in emergency. Now, I would like to invite Mr. Naveen Shukla, sir, to word of remarks, word of thanks. I'm audible.
Yes, you are audible. Yes. Am I audible too?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. So first of all, I would like to take this opportunity to thank you, Efren, from our regional team, and to taking out your time and conducting this important session on EIE. We have got a lot of, especially on tools and how we can develop the EIE concept in India, basically in a local context. That is one of the major key learning from all the participants. Second is also, I would like to take the opportunity to thank you, Sphere India, for arranging and managing this workshop and providing this platform to talk about this important subject. And third, I would also like to thank you to all the participants who has been present in the session and who has been looking after to understanding this EIE major concept. So I would like to thank you each and everyone who has been available on this platform. So thank you very much. Thank you, everyone. And over to you.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.
So, presentation and the session is very effective and I look forward to our continued collaboration. We will shortly send by email a feedback and certificate link. Thank you so much for everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, and have a great day.